In business news today, 3 things to know. First, security concerns shadow the World Economic Forum on Africa in Nigeria. Escalating attacks by the Islamist terrorist group Boko Haram have everyone in the region on high alert. Then, growth spurt. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen says the economy will grow faster in 2014, but how will the momentum last? And cashing in on those cakes, hot cakes, folks. How cupcakes and custom specialty cakes are sweetening the global economy. Arise Exchange starts right now. Welcome to Arise Exchange. After months of planning, the World Economic Forum is underway in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. But concerns over security have taken center stage there. After more violence and deadly attacks by the terrorist extremist Boko Haram. We will have more on that in a moment, but first, here's how the markets did today. The Dow closing up to 16,518, the S&P 500 closing up to 1878, and the Nasdaq ended the day down to 4067. Here's a look at the stocks we are watching today. British bank HSBC reported its first quarter profit fell 18% because of a slump in its Asian operations, which accounts for more than half of its earnings. The company says earnings fell to $5.21 billion from $6.35 billion in the period a year earlier. HSBC closing down to $50.81. Well, shares of Whole Foods tanked by more than 20% in earlier trading after the company released its quarterly profit of just $142 million. The same as last year. Well, the competition and more accessibility is driving down the cost of organic foods. Of course, that's good news for consumers. Whole Foods closing down to $38.93. And Yahoo shares also tumbled over the news of a long-awaited Alibaba IPO, which the Chinese company finally filed on Tuesday. Yahoo has approximately $26 billion stake in the company. Of course, we'll have more on this story later in the show. Yahoo closing at $34.07. Well, and all eyes on Tesla after reporting its earnings of 12 cents a share, excluding one-time items on sales of $713 million, beating expectations of 10 cents a share of $699 million in that cool revenue. Tesla closing down at $201.35. Now for a look at those commodities. Gold closing down to $1,289 an ounce, and oil closing up to $100.78 a barrel. Well, I'm Julian Phillips, of course, and for Andrew Smirch, who's at the Economic Forum in Nigeria. When Fed Chair Janet Yellen speaks, as you know, people listen. And she said a lot today, including news that the economy is on track. But an eye needs to be kept on the housing market because any deterioration there could change, of course, the entire scenario. Now, with the labor market that she says is still far from satisfactory, Yellen said the Fed would remain in an accommodative mode. Well, joining us now is
Looking ahead, I expect that economic activity will expand at a somewhat faster pace this year than it did last year, that the unemployment rate will continue to decline gradually, and that inflation will begin to move up toward 2%.
Well, joining us now is Kathy Boyle, president of Chapin Hill Advisors. Welcome back.
Nice to be here.
We got to talk about Alibaba. They filed paperwork for an IPO, which could get them, I think, something about raise $20 billion. Talk to us about this.
Well, you know, everybody's been wondering when they're going to do it, you know, and it's been very secretive, very difficult to figure out what Yahoo's plans really are, whether or not this is really going to work. It's a Chinese market, you know, new territory for everybody. Everybody's trying to figure out how to get into all those consumers and potential consumers. But, you know, we'll have to see. I mean, the fact that Yahoo went down on the news means that somebody doesn't like something.
Absolutely. Let's move on here to Janet Yellen testified before the Joint Economic Committee of Congress today. Were you surprised by anything she said?
Well, it was interesting that she said that there was a bubble in small caps, essentially. That's the way it's being interpreted, because small caps are trading at a very big premium relative to any other metric, much higher than the NASDAQ, actually, and the NASDAQ is usually seen as the high flyers. And actually, 50% of the Russell 2000, which is a small cap index, 967 of them have dropped 20% from their highs. units.
Wow.
So they're in their own mini bear market, but nobody really knows it.
You know, we've been talking about this housing market all along here, and she's saying, well, look, if there's any change in that, if it deteriorates anything, that could just change the entire scenario. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, because, you know, the housing is locked in, it's tied in. The new homes, families generate the new homes, and jobs go on, et cetera, et cetera. But remember, we've got 26% of the population living back with their parents. So the baby boomers are not able to sell their house because they've got little young'uns still in there coming back, the boomerang generation. And, you know, a lot of the housing numbers are actually investors that are buying multifamily units for rental units. Because now we have a rental generation. And remember, we have the big student loan, you know, debacle hanging over the heads. So you have a 23, a 25-year-old, 26-year-old, they don't have credit, they don't have a down payment, they have a bunch of student loans. So we're not really in great shape.
And of course, they're deep in debt on top of everything
Totally
else.
deep in debt. And so how do you buy a house? And the banks are being super stingy on credit and looking for, you know, a great track record and a great credit rating and consistent job, which the young generation doesn't have.
But Yellen says, though, she's going to try to be accommodating in this. And basically what she's saying here, they're going to try to keep these interest rates down. I think that's got to be a good thing.
Well, that's what everybody's hanging their hat on, because the thought is that as long as bonds don't become an opportunity relative to stocks, money's going to continue to flow into stocks. And remember, Julian, we have all kinds of political unrest. Look what's going on in Nigeria with the girls that have been kidnapped.
Please.
Brazil, Venezuela. You just go through the political uncertainty, and rich Russians, where do you think they're putting their money? They're getting it out. So you've got money flow coming in from other countries, and the risk of currency going down, the Turkish lira just fell a huge amount. So money's coming out of these countries, and that flow is part of what's driving the equity markets.
Yellen is testifying before the Senate Budget Committee tomorrow, we understand. I mean, any surprises there? Anything
No, it's
different?
more droning along. I mean, everybody's looking to see if the Fed is going to maintain this accommodative state. Are rates not going to go rising up? If rates go racing up, bonds become an attractive option, stocks go down. If everybody thinks that bonds stay down here very low, very accommodative, then the market's everybody thinks we're going to buy time so we can muddle along until things get better.
We got 30 seconds left. Why are stocks remaining so high with this mixed economic data?
They're the best choice right now if you want any kind of return, and look what they've done, 6 years of going up. So you've got individual investors flocking to them, and lots of guys think valuations are reasonable, and they're comparing it to, it's kind of the least sturdy shirt again, and the U.S. market is the safest market, even though we're losing our market share as a global economy. So that's really why stocks are continuing to drive. Plus, we have the flow that I just talked about from all these other countries. So you've got institutional money, and you've got individual investors, and you've got foreign capital coming in.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, we packed a lot into this sandwich here. Kathy Boyle, thanks a lot. We're going along for the ride.
All right, cool.
Thanks for joining us. All right. As the World Economic Forum gets underway tomorrow in Nigeria's capital of Abuja, concerns over security have taken center stage. Arise News' Jerome Evans has the latest report.
The World Economic Forum begins in earnest tomorrow, but high-level dignitaries are already arriving in Abuja. Heads of state, business leaders and the international community are here to discuss trade, development and equality. But it's another delegation that's grabbing the headlines in the Nigerian capital. US Special Forces are reportedly on their way to aid in the search for 200 schoolgirls still missing after they were abducted from this school in Chibok in northeastern Nigeria. And 11 more girls abducted yesterday from the village of Warabe.
Mr. Kerry assured President Jonathan that the United States is wholly committed to giving Nigeria all required support and assistance to save the abducted girls and bring the reign of terror unleashed on parts of the country by Boko Haram to an end.
The continuing unrest in the northeast of Nigeria brought into sharp focus the theme of this conference: development and inclusive growth. Some delegates say the northern states of Nigeria have not shared in the growth bonanza driven by the oil-rich south, causing tensions in Africa's largest economy. Today, a new initiative was announced. Former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown and Arise Editor-in-Chief Nduka Obagbena want to make schools safer across Nigeria and fight back against Boko Haram's efforts to disrupt education.
So we cannot be defeated by terrorism in any way, shape or form. And we want to reach out, working with the media, civil society, youths, communities and students to make our schools safe.
The continuing search for the kidnapped schoolgirls is in some ways symptomatic of a larger problem. Now, the opulent surroundings of the Hilton Abuja are a far cry from the devastated communities in Nigeria's northeast. And what delegates at this conference will be trying to figure out is how to take the runaway growth story of Africa and use it to pull some of the poorest people on this continent out of poverty. Jerome Evans, Abuja, Arise News.
And tomorrow, Rise Exchange anchor Andrew Schmertz will have more, reporting live from the World Economic Forum in Nigeria's capital of Abuja. Coming up, more trouble for GM as Congress jumpstarts their investigation over mishaps at the beleaguered company into high gear. Yet another recall by Ford, and just who will be manufacturing vehicles in China? You're watching Rise Exchange.
I don't think that television news in the United States reflects the diversity of the world. I don't think it does a great job of even reflecting the diversity of the United States.
When you are watching TV, you don't really see a lot of different cultures. There are plenty of other places that people might not even know about.
We are living in a global culture, and you cannot hide news that is happening when there's so much social media.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Welcome back to the Exchange. General Motors CEO Mary Barra is on the hot seat yet again. Congress is taking a much closer look into how much she and other GM executives may have been involved, more than they publicly admitted, regarding those deadly ignition switches that have been linked to at least 13 deaths. Now, for that and other news, the car coach Lauren Fix joins us live on the set. Nice to have you here and good to see you after all these years in person.
Nice to see you in person rather than remotely.
To say the least. Look, you can't tell me that they may not find some sort of link to Mary Barra and these executives over there with these ignition switches.
Well, you can't blame it on one person. Just like here, if you want to make a change, one person brings it to another person, and we don't know where it went from there. Now, even though she may have been in charge of safety, it's hard to blame Mary specifically for this problem. It could have been one division. It has to be tracked down. And again, it's going to be a paper trail. They will eventually find out what it is. There's no way they're going to get away with it. However, I still believe that there is still more pressing from the outside. When you had the government intervention, they had someone from each division with a government employee in there. And I still think there's something going on behind the scenes that may have had nothing to do with a specific person.
Right. But let's move on here. We got so much to cover here.
Yes.
Fiat and Chrysler to build Jeep models in China. I mean, this doesn't bode well for assembly lines here in the United States, especially Chrysler.
Actually, I knew that we were going to discuss that, so I spoke with a Chrysler person. Actually, I had lunch with him, and he told me that they're still going to continue to build Jeeps here in the U.S., but they're also going to build in China, in India, and this is really exciting. They're talking about right now Jeep sales are at 1 million. For 2014, that's their expectations.
Wow.
That's a lot. You got the new Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee, and they've got more product coming out. And I can't release what that is because I'll get in trouble.
On.
We'll just say there's going to be more product line, and it's going to be exciting. They released some stuff at the New York Auto Show, possibly maybe with some old brands, maybe something like a Wagoneer. We'll see when it actually shows up. But they're looking at a 5-year plan of 1.9 million Jeeps. By 2018, they're going to be selling them in China, and I think they're going to sell a lot of them.
Oh, I have no doubt about that.
They're definitely paying attention. I have to say, give Chrysler a lot of credit for what they've done.
These recalls are driving me crazy.
Yes.
Especially when the Germans start recalling cars over there. Then my antennas go up. But Ford now, the F-Series, that's one of their most popular, iconic vehicles. They recalled 4,000 of these cars.
That's not a lot in the big. 4,000 is nothing. I actually happen to have a Ford F-Series truck, for full disclosure, and I have had a minor problem, but it got resolved. These are one of the things that consumers need to understand, that when you buy a car, it's never going to be perfect, especially when there's more product being produced.
But why aren't we hearing more about this recently?
Everybody's running scared, let's be honest.
Okay.
Wouldn't you? If you were a car manufacturer and you and I said, we have this little problem, do we fix it internally or do we announce it? You know what? I'm announcing it. I'm definitely going to let the world know. I want consumers to come in and get their cars fixed, and it's also a good way to reconnect with your customers.
But this is not, in a sense, scaring people away from buying these cars. And when I think about these recalls, I'm thinking, well, I don't know. Maybe the company's not doing everything they need to do to make sure the quality control on these cars is what it should be.
Well, a lot of times when things go out into the field, it's totally different than when the quality control. The item may be right, and when it's in production, it's actually being used by a consumer every day. That's when little glitches come up, and they can be fixed. 4,000 vehicles, considering it's the #1 selling vehicle, the Ford F-Series, for 37 years. And the funny thing is, I've run into people that have like Chevy Cobalts. I said, hey, you're going to get your car in for a recall? Or, hey, you've got a Buick Enclave with a problem. They go, there's a recall? Oh, I didn't know. I was like, wow, have we not put enough press out there? So if you do know someone with one, please tell them, because it's for your safety and theirs.
Let's talk about Tesla for a minute here. A first quarter net loss of $25 million. People are not really excited about these electric cars, are they?
Well, total sales, if you look at total sales for 2013, you're looking at 15.7 million cars. Of the total sales, only 3% are electric vehicles.
Right.
So that's not a lot of vehicles. And he's right now, last year he had 22,477 vehicles. He's expecting 35,000 cars. It's a big jump. That's a 28% margin. And right now, I think people are kind of cooling off. It looks like the stock market could take a dip as much as 10% after hours.
Mm-hmm. You know, outside of Tesla, there was another car manufacturer. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think was it Fisher? Or Fisker.
Fisker. That was a government-backed one. That's a whole other interesting story.
A lemon.
Well, they had a battery problem.
Yeah.
And A123 battery was supplying the batteries, and there was a problem. The car was actually a pretty cool vehicle. I did test drive one.
A friend of mine has one.
Yeah, and they're kind of cool. Problem is now you can't get parts for them. But that's the only problem when you buy, you buy cars that have question, they're beginners essentially. So what happened with Fisker is battery 123 supplied them with batteries that didn't work. They had fires. They were random, and at Consumer Reports, so that sort of ended. That was the downfall of Fisker. Now, guess who's buying them? Battery A123 has changed their name, and now they've made a bid to purchase Fisker.
Okay, we got about 20 seconds left. Do you think that these electric cars will really start to take off in the near future at all?
I think consumers don't like to be tethered to a cord. How many times have you run around going, right now I have my cell phone charging in your green room. So this is typical of people. We're always plugging in our phones, whether it's during the day or at night. And I think it's a limitation for people. And that range anxiety, until that's gone, I mean, even Tesla makes the longest range. I think he might be better off in the battery business, because that's still going to be something that will never end.
Give me 440 horses with a Hurst shifter and I'm good.
I'm with you. I'm definitely there.
Lauren Fix, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian. Good to see you.
Time now for our business ticker, stories making news around the world. A report out of Bloomberg has shed some light on Putin's obsession with eastern Ukraine. The region that has become a hotbed of pro-Russian separatists is also home to over 50 factories that have been building specialized equipment for Russia. The exports are so specialized they cannot be substituted by Russian production, leaving Putin entirely dependent on Ukraine's military output. Nevertheless, pressure in the region seems to be easing, with Putin asking Russian troops to withdraw and calling the scheduled presidential election in Ukraine a step in the right direction. Well, college kids can thank Congress for pricier student loans. That's right, student loan rates are expected to go up this fall, folks. Congress passed legislation keeping student loan rates low throughout last year, but after 2013, they will rise with the markets. And as a result, rates are expected to get even higher in the coming years. Well, millions in diamonds are going up for auction in Geneva next week. Catch those planes. The diamonds, including two extremely rare 100-carat diamonds, are making a tour around the world, stopping in Asia, New York, and the Middle East before making their way to Europe. The main attraction, a 100.09-carat deep yellow diamond, expected to fetch between $15 and $25 million. Oh, my goodness. Ahead, technology's role in the economic development of Africa. You're watching Arise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms, just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Well, one of the key factors that play a role in the economic growth of Africa is technology, but integrating it has not always been an easy road. Joining us to talk about the challenges and opportunities is David Garrity with GVA Research. You know, when you talk about technology, cell phones, internet, what are we talking about here for technology with Africa?
Primarily in the case of Africa, you're talking about cell phones, and you're not talking about smartphones. You're talking about what are basic feature phones. And the thing to focus at here, I do consulting work with the World Bank and have done since 2010 with an emphasis on sub-Saharan Africa. And what we find is that we've got about 1.7 billion people that have cell phone access but don't have access to a bank account. And so a lot of what's been done in the area of mobile money, primarily starting in Kenya with M-Pesa, a service offered by Safaricom, which is a subsidiary of Vodafone, was basically giving people the ability to send money or transfer money across distances and do so on a far more cost-effective basis than what had been done historically. And the ability to basically enable transfers on a cost-effective basis, making more money available across the economy, had a significant impact. And you've seen that unfold first in the case of Kenya, but potentially we'll see it in other countries across Africa.
You know, I was going to ask about that in terms of the companies that are coming in there. Are we seeing a mad rush by companies to invest in Africa as far as technology is concerned, especially with these phones?
Well, you've certainly seen a number of deployments almost globally, according to the Global Cell Phone Manufacturers Association. There are about 220 mobile money deployments around the world, many of those in Africa. And the issues there have been, in some cases, we haven't seen the uptake that we've seen in Kenya. Some of that's been the fact that the banks have been concerned about being disintermediated, basically giving their customer relationship to the mobile network operators. But nonetheless, you still see mobile network operators, whether it's MTN, headquartered in South Africa, or whether it's Vodafone, we talked about, based in the UK, or there's Orange, which is a subsidiary of France Telecom, or actually, if you look over in India, Airtel, which is owned by Bharti. All four companies have been very active in terms of supporting mobile money deployments in Africa.
Sure. When you think about technology, you also think about electricity. And I remember when President Barack Obama went over there and talked about sub-Saharan Africa, there's a paucity of electricity down there. So how do you couple the two? How do you raise one and also get the other involved?
Well, what's been surprising is just the use of solar power, even on a small scale, seeing solar-powered charging stations for cell phone use. Apart from that, if one wants to look on a larger scale basis, there are developments taking place in terms of using alternative technologies, batteries, when coupled with either solar or wind power, to have microgrids. So in this extent, while traditional electrical distribution and generation capacity projects would be billions of dollars, you can actually reach a large percentage of the population for less money.
And you're talking about billions of dollars. Of course, the eyes of corporate executives are just getting wider and wider. But, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the other issue here. It's the 800-pound elephant in the room. And that's, of course, is the unrest in many parts of the continent. It would seem to me that some companies might not want to come in with all that's going on over there.
Certainly. I mean, the unrest most recently in northeast Nigeria, but we could look beyond that and look at what happened in Mali back in 2013, look at the difficulties in South Sudan. The issues, obviously, we can go through a fairly long laundry list. The question is how well can these risks be managed? And one would argue that if we look at the overall growth within Africa, and if one were to look within major urban population centers, yes, there is risk in these locations. Many of these locations we named are primarily in rural areas. So one looks at the opportunity in the large urban populations in Africa, and that's what draws in outside investors.
We got 10 seconds left here. Of course, China is heavily involved in Africa. What other countries and companies are coming into Africa at this point, do you know?
Interestingly enough, inside of Africa, there's been a pushback on the Chinese. In many cases, I've seen them termed as the new colonialists. And from that standpoint, the projects that the Chinese have engaged in Africa have basically been poor, in some cases shoddy. If we look at infrastructure projects in Angola, we had roads that basically were failing shortly after construction. So from that standpoint, Africans are understanding there's a wide number of companies and countries they should do business with.
And I guess that's why the Chinese took a visit over there recently. David Garrity, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
All righty. Next, the big boom in sweet treats. You're watching Arise Exchange. Well, it seems everywhere you look these days, there's a bakery or cupcake shop nearby on some street corner. Analysts say in-store sales of cupcakes rose by more than 18% in the last few years and are projected to rise approximately 20% over the next 5 years. Well, our next guest knows about this firsthand. She took her love for baking and turned it into big business and joins us now to tell us all about it. Welcome, Shannon Pridgen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. My mouth is watering, though. First of all, you got to tell us what we have here on the set.
What we have are a custom cake and custom cupcakes. And what we do is we make custom desserts tailored for the individual. And I brought examples so you can see what can be done. Everything is edible. It's made out of sugar.
No, I saw your website, and I saw all different kinds of things. You had like a lobster crab or a crab or whatever it is, and all this, a sewing machine. I mean, these things really, in fact, we're seeing some of your pieces right now. There's a, on the screen right now. What is that?
Oh, that was a handbag.
And look at this.
Gucci boots with a charm bracelet.
How do you come up with this stuff?
The customers, what they do is they give me an idea, a feel of what they want, and then we make it into sugar. We take their ideas and we turn it into something tangible.
Why are baking goods bakeries so big? You see these all over the city now, these small little shops, cupcake shops. Why are they so big all of a sudden?
You know what I think? I think that when you go anywhere, just all your life, whatever event, no one takes a picture of the chicken. They always take a picture of the cake.
They take pictures of my chicken.
No. So it's just that's the focal point. That is the focal point. So everyone wants to know, like, what does the cake look like?
Okay, so tell me how you started with this. I mean, did you start in your own kitchen, and how did this burgeon into?
Yeah, it started, I love sweets. I have a big sweet tooth, I still do. And then one day someone said, oh, I don't like sweets, I just like to decorate. So it kind of planted this seed, and it just spun off. And then I went to school and I studied baking, I studied cake decorating, and it's just, it's my life.
So you came up with this name, Heavenly Crumbs, for your boutique bakery.
Yes.
Talk about the business of getting into business. How difficult was it to raise capital for this? How was it?
I don't think that it was difficult because I got a loan. What the hardest part is maintaining the business.
But okay, how much was your loan, may I ask? Do you want to tell?
No, not really.
Okay, all right. But was it a substantial amount? Because
it really was. It was more than I could afford to lose.
Really?
Yeah.
But you know, these days people are so, I guess it's my point, people are so reluctant to give money out to upstarts. You must have had super fantastic credit.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
And I'd been in the business for a while.
Okay, all right. So you started, and then you opened up a small shop, and then it just blossomed from there?
Yeah, I was doing this at home before, and then I opened up a shop in Bed-Stuy, and there was nothing there, nothing.
Wow.
And we sort of was like that kind of special place on the block, and then we introduced many people to custom cakes, to finer desserts, because we're also classically trained. So everything we do well.
Well, I'm smelling this stuff, and I want to taste a little of this. What is this here?
We have several things. We have a lemon cake with a orange buttercream. We have a yellow cake with a Bacardi buttercream. And we also have a passion fruit.
What am I eating now?
I think you're eating French vanilla. And
this is outstanding. You made this yourself?
And a makeup brush. Huh? Yeah.
Now, are most of your sales coming from the store, or basically a lot of your sales coming from people who just want...
Most of our sales are coming actually from the custom stuff, from the custom cakes, the custom cupcakes. You have a large demand. People want to have something special at a party that no one's ever seen. A lot of times people come in, they'll have a sketch. And it's like, all right, can you make this for us? Or they'll have an idea, or they'll take several ideas and we'll put them all together and we'll sketch it out for them.
I've got to ask the future of Heavenly Crumbs. Are you planning to franchise this? How are you going to, you know,
we're planning to open another location in Manhattan.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Very similar to what we have, just bigger.
You're just not giving out much information here, are you?
We can't.
I just want to know more.
We can't.
I can see you just easing down the Sumner Street with your Lamborghini in Bed-Stuy, but this is absolutely, I mean, this is just delicious. I couldn't eat much of this, so I'd really get fat.
We didn't do it.
Look, thanks so much for being here. Heavenly Crumbs, much success to you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, tomorrow on Xchange, we'll have more on the World Economic Forum on Africa and Nigeria with anchor Andrew Schmertzy Smertz. Stay tuned for then. See you later. This is great.